Welcome to Caldwell University Conversations. I'm Colette Liddy. Learning loss due to the pandemic has been a concern for educators and parents. As we turn a corner towards more consistent in-person classes and activities, what are the realities of this learning loss? What are the most pressing needs for our K through 12 and college students? And what can be done to help educators and parents respond to what some have called unfinished learning? Here to answer those questions and more are Professor Catherine Lundquist from the Division of Education at Caldwell University, Professor Patricia Garudo from the Department of Mathematics at Caldwell University, and Professor Julianne Milletta, Director of Field-Based Education at Caldwell. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So my first question to everyone, what is your biggest concern or challenge about student learning given the last 2 years? Dr. Lundquist, I'll start with you.
All right. Well, the biggest concern through my lens is that the children have been isolated at home through no fault of anybody, but because of remote learning. And they do not have the social and emotional piece to attend with in the classroom, outside at recess, at lunchtime. And there's a tremendous concern about that in the classrooms now with the teachers who are with their students in September. They were very, very concerned that the behavior was going to change. And according to some of my sources, it has. And they've had to rearrange or figure out new ways of being with the children and helping the children and nurturing them along for this social and emotional piece. And then last week, most of the schools removed their masks. And now there's a whole new situation to be dealing with. And the children are rather quiet when I went in to visit a student teacher this week, just looking at each other and not realizing that people have a whole face and the voices are a little bit louder now and you can understand a little bit better. So I think that pretty much covers it for me.
Thank you. And Dr. Milletta, you also work with future teachers. What is your biggest concern or challenge right now with student learning?
Sure. I agree with Professor Lundquist. I definitely think there is a need for us to continue supporting students social emotionally as they make the transition from virtual learning to physical in-class instruction. In addition to that, I think one of my largest concerns as a former educator in K-8 are the gaps that we know have developed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the strengths of New Jersey teachers are that they are experts at differentiating instruction. So pre-COVID times, so many teachers are able to address the needs of all learners through tactile learning, visual, audio, where students are able to create things. And unfortunately, with COVID-19, we saw the shift to virtual learning and some of the aspects of that teaching changed. And so it was hard to honor all learners when the platform, the classroom, was not accessible. It became a virtual classroom. So I really am concerned about some of those learning gaps. I know the teachers are working really hard to close those gaps. Also, I've heard from the field and the students I've gone out to see that there are some school districts that are still not permitting small group instruction. So although they're back in classrooms, they're still maintaining a healthy distance apart and they're not permitting students to use communal supplies. So that's small group instruction where we can intervene and really provide different models of learning still has some parameters on it. So I hope that as we see the brighter side of the end of this pandemic, that teachers will be able to differentiate using all the modalities that they know work to reach all their learners. And I think once we return to some more normalcy, those learning gaps will close.
Professor Garudo, you've taught math at the university level for many years. What's your biggest concern or challenge these days?
Well, my biggest concern is, are these students coming in ready to face a new math course? And as my colleagues have said, certainly these pandemic issues took precedence. Many of our students, many people in our community faced family sickness and even death. So any kind of academic material would have to take a back seat during these times. As we're coming out the other side of this, there are some troubling gaps in any subject area, and in my area, mathematics. So when we have students coming back, we see a loss of confidence. We see how the isolation has taken a toll on these students. There has been, in the past, they've been able to have classroom sharing and working together. And so there have been gaps that have occurred due to remote learning, students having computer issues, not being able to sign on. So these gaps will have a rippling effect in the area of mathematics. So if you take something like an Algebra 1 course, if a student lost some basic skills in that area, and say it's just even something with fractions and percents and decimals, that doesn't go away. Mathematics, like lots of other courses and other subject areas, it builds upon itself, and it will have a rippling effect for years to come. So the fractions that they were having trouble with now in Algebra 1, they don't go away. Students will begin to see more involved fractional work in Algebra 2, going on into something like a pre-calculus course. Now they're getting into fractions with sines and cosines, getting into then further along into calculus. They're going to again see fractions, now looking at doing differential type equations. So it becomes something where a basic skill is now going to impact future learning in much more difficult courses. And these are the courses we really would like our students to be taking, because it gives them such a great background for when they want to go out and look for employment in different areas. So the other area that also had concerned me a little bit, and not only for our university, but for all colleges and universities and all K through 12 schools, is that a lot of times the assessment methods changed. So students who were used to preparing for, say, a math test or a math quiz, knowing they had to be sharp on their facts, now, because things were done at home, tests became open book and quizzes became open notebook. And so these skills where the rigor was much more intense lost a little bit of that. And because students could now rely upon going back in their notes, and there was no way in the beginning for professors or teachers to actually monitor and see who's using notes. So it became, everything was open book for students. So, and also the way we graded students had changed too. Things like offering a pass fail as opposed to A, B, C's. And so the students who might constantly strive for that A were more content saying, you know what, I can do C+ work and I'll get a pass. And so that became an option in final grading. So we had a little bit of slack going on there. And so now it's going to, we're going to see where these gaps exist, and we're going to have to try to fill them in as time goes forward.
Interesting. So as educators, as university educators, you really are adjusting. And I know, Professor Meletta, you presented recently on teaching and learning in the age of COVID. And just briefly, what was some of the advice that you gave to your colleagues?
Sure. Similar as Professor Garudo said, our students and university students all over that have been affected by COVID pandemic were supported in their high schools with a more scaffolded platform with more loose deadlines. And so some of the advice that I gave to my colleagues is, let's assume that there are those gaps in learning because some of the scaffolds were put in place, maybe more so than we are used to. And also that the learning was, as we mentioned, a pass fail or maybe open book. But one way that we can address this is to meet students where they are. And we can do that by pre-assessing our students and adjusting our syllabi to what they need. And I think that would be a great way to meet them. And so that would even the playing field and really give them what they need. In addition, I think that we could support them, and I encourage my colleagues to support them with reminders of due dates for assignments. We are used to passing out our syllabus and asking the students to refer to that and making really that more their responsibility. But these students who have been learning virtually through platforms like Google Classroom are always supported with those electronic reminders when things are due, and even after they've been due if those assignments were not handed in. So I think in a gradual release, it would be nice for us to provide some of that scaffolded support until we get through this pandemic, where they now return to more normal and more independent responsibility with their deadlines. And I just think too, we need to be flexible. You know, some of them have not been in school in 2 years. And so to have their first college experience in person, really pick up from when they were sophomores is it's a challenge, and they have to now learn how to make that transition. And I know at our university, we do that well. So.
And Professor Lindquist, you hit on this social and emotional learning, which I know you taught kindergarten for many years and in the New Jersey public schools. How do you teach your future teachers about that social emotional learning and the importance of it? I mean, Dr. Garudo talked about the loss of confidence. I'm sure all of that plays in together.
Absolutely. And Professor Milletta talked about being flexible, and I believe that's the word, along with empathetic. And if we model that empathy for our students, there's a bond and a relationship that develops. And I teach teachers. I teach students who want to become teachers, or teachers who are already teachers. And there's a certain feeling among all of us that we will do our best no matter what. And so while I was going through this with my students at Caldwell, and of course, Caldwell University was flexible in itself. The university was flexible for the professors and the instructors, and therefore then we could pass that on to our students. And no one took advantage of that. They wanted to know, how can we get through this? And from my perspective, I wanted to get through it with them together. So in each of the classes, and including the remote classes that I had, I always started out with, what's the COVID plus for today? Let's look at COVID as if it has given us something for our professions, for our where we want to go, for our goals. And we used to do that often, and the students began to like it because there was more camaraderie. As far as, we were on remote, we were looking at the screen, we weren't sure who was who, but there was something about just hearing a voice. There was something about just seeing a picture that you really had to listen and to look intently. And I don't know that always happens in the face-to-face classes. So we took that as a plus. We shared for the first 5 minutes of class that meditation and thinking about self-health was so very, very important. And we also took the time to ask each other about each other. And those were all pluses for COVID for us.
Lessons learned is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And how about the populations of students that have been hardest hit that we're hearing about? The needs for special needs kids, students from lower income homes. They were already in a challenging position. So what happens here? Dr. Mileto, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. I heard from a lot of my colleagues in the field that work in districts where students did not have access to technology as readily, either because the school district was not one-to-one or because the family setup perhaps did not have their own Wi-Fi. And so that became a challenge. But like teachers do, they found creative ways. They spoke to administration. I know in 2 districts where we place student teachers, uh, the administrators of that district worked very closely with Optimum to create hotspots in areas, in neighborhoods where there were weakened hotspots because they were not subscribers to wireless in their home. And the school districts did that so that all students can have access, and that learning was not being done on paper for some and virtual for others. So kudos to them. I also think our pre-service teachers were really an asset to the environments that they were in, because some of the teachers were not as technologically ready for this really quick shift. But because our education classes give them the opportunity to explore and create these dynamic, engaging lessons, they were able to show their cooperating teacher, hey, this is something that I've tried. Maybe you want to try this, and websites that they were not familiar with. So it was really nice to see that our students were already giving to clinical intern experiences that generally give to them first. The cooperating teachers are such a strong asset to our student teachers. And finally, I think that we really support our pre-service teachers that then support students in all areas, is that we remind them of the stress that the teacher already has. And we don't want to have the student and clinical intern put any more pressure on. So our clinical interns are always willing to take the small group and do an engaging lesson with just a small group virtually, while the teacher takes, and does the whole class instruction. So I think that's the way that we really supported our teachers, so they can support students in all different environments with IEPs, 504s, and in all different economic backgrounds.
Great collaboration. Wonderful. Dr. Garudo, I'm thinking too about the high achieving student, right? And, it must have been challenging going in and out, especially K through 12. We're in person, then we're not in person, right? And how to ramp up for those high achievers. How in your own university teaching over the years have you challenged those high achieving students? What do you give them?
Well, I think with the COVID situation, one of the first things we needed to do with the high achievers, also with any of our achievers, is to find out where they stand, where their abilities were. And the high achievers, we could do a little bit of differentiated instruction and help them go on beyond some of the requirements of a particular course. It's always important, no matter what, to make connections with our students early in the semester. So some of the things we have done, and some of the things that have helped some of our STEM students, is Caldwell University has received a nice STEM grant that allows for some of those high achieving students to become part of a classroom experience where they actually participate in a classroom as almost like a tutor, and they attend the class and can work with some of these students who might need some additional help, and they are paid through this STEM grant. So they get the experience in working with some of the other students. They get the experience in learning how to teach some of the material, and it works well for them too. It gives them a sense of accomplishment, that they are part of this grant and they are being paid, and they are working with other students who might need a little extra help. So that's one way of doing it. And even in the courses where we don't have that particular STEM grant, we do try in our department to let some of these students even teach a lesson occasionally, or show their high achieving ability in various projects and in internships and things along that line.
And you also encourage research. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Colette. Students are able to conduct research when they work with faculty members who offer them important guidance. Caldwell University also schedules a Research and Creative Arts Day each year in the spring. And at this special day, the students are able to share their research findings with the entire campus community. Another important program for high achieving students is the Caldwell University Honors Program. And this program offers special courses and even additional research opportunities to the honors students. I want to say also most departments offer independent studies to high achieving students. And in these situations, the students work directly with a faculty member and they can explore advanced topics that are of interest to them. I know in our department in mathematics, we have had students study topics such as advanced statistics or topology. So there's lots of opportunities for these students.
That's really great. Wonderful, wonderful experiences for them. A question I have here is there, a need to invest more money into summer programs or tutoring or of those different type of experiences, maybe not doing it the way that it has been done before. What do you think about that, Dr. Lundquist?
Now, if you can clarify for me, you mean for our university students or?
I was thinking more like K through 12
All right.
experiences.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I've heard of a program, and I believe it's in the Oranges, that students can sign up starting at 3:30, and they can go on remotely and join teachers to make up for some of the work that they have missed. And they are able then to move on to the next class. There's a concern, of course, for the grade level that they're in, that will they be able to move on to the next grade level? So this particular school system has offered an opportunity to, if you're willing to do it, the teachers are willing to teach you. And apparently it is having great success. And so, and in addition, most of these students now have their Chromebooks. And as a result of COVID, not everybody had a Chromebook. Not everybody could work from home.
Mhm.
And so each of the students have that now. And teachers being who they are, they're willing to work from 3:30 to 7 o'clock at night. That
Mm.
overtime for their students to give them what it is that they need. As far as the social and emotional piece of that, just for the daycare centers, and also, yes, the learning in the summer as far as playing goes for preschool and kindergarten and first grade. There are programs now being created and teachers volunteering for them to provide that social and emotional piece in a play setting, in a friendly setting, in a let's get to know each other setting. And I think that's marvelous.
Dr. Milletta, do you have any comments on that?
Sure, sure. I hear from the field, I know from my colleagues that some of these learning gaps are already being addressed. New Jersey teachers always want to support their students and they are always proactive. And so there are many school districts that right now are offering programs like a boost program where students in each grade level are identified by a set of criteria. And those students in most need are meeting either before school or after school with educators who are masters of their craft to try to close some of those gaps. So this is already being done before summer even starts to support parents. And we know that tutoring could be so costly. So this is no charge, just trying to be proactive and closing those gaps before school ends. In addition, universities like Caldwell offer summer tutoring programs on campus. We have graduate students who are reading specialists and are earning their master's in literacy. And we have been closed because of pandemic, but we will be reopening our doors in July to offer tutoring services for students whose parents are concerned about learning gaps, and they'll meet with experts in the field, teachers, and then graduate students that are also going to be certified as reading specialists to address these needs. So I definitely think the need is there, and there are resources available. I think the school districts and universities are working to support parents and students.
Well, that's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. Okay, so our final question here. We're hearing about a need for teachers, a need for teachers, for young people, for maybe not so young, joining the profession. And I have great admiration for you and for the profession of teaching. I grew up the daughter of a Newark public high school English teacher. I saw his passion for the students, his dedication. It stayed with me all my life. So just a quick go around. Tell me why teaching is a great profession to go into, Dr. Lindquist.
Well, I don't think there's any other profession in the world. I'm not even sure I'm going to call it a profession. I'll call it a vocation.
Agreed.
The passion that we have for our students, the love that we can give them, the caring that we can give them, is enormous. And when I first started teaching, I wasn't sure I was in the right field, because I started teaching high school seniors in English. And I thought I'd set them on fire for, not literally, of course, with Shakespeare. But there was a point I thought they were going to set me on fire, literally. So I realized they were bigger, they were smarter, they weren't interested. And I was only 23 years old. So I wasn't that far away from them being 17 and 18 years old. So as I went down the line, and it took me a year to find my kindergarten job, which I stayed in for 42 years. Kindergarten students, that was my niche. And my sister has always called the profession, the vocation, a noble one. We're certainly not in it for the money. I don't know, I think praise is there a little bit more, but we are in it for the right reasons. We want to give to our children. And even if we make a difference in one person's life, one child's life, make it just a tad easier, then we've done our job. As far as going out and pounding the pavement, looking for teachers putting the hook out, because I think that's what we're going to have to do. I have gone back to my school that I taught in for all those years, and I speak with my colleagues there, and how can we reach out to seniors and students in high school who might even be thinking about this, and let's show them what it's all about, invite them into the classroom. And I also ask my students at Caldwell to invite either their favorite teachers or students, friends that they know, come in and just take a look at an education course. Take a look at what it's all about. And because I start each of my classes with that 5 minutes a day of something that's good that's happening, or can we help each other? I also talk about teaching, and and my students know me well because of a quote that I say to them, which is, we have the power in that classroom to make it a happy or sad place,
Mm.
to make it a progressive or a non-progressing place, to make it a place of just wonderful friendships or isolation. We have all of that power in our hands. And I am, for one, grateful that I have it, and everybody that I meet, I will sit down and talk to them about becoming a teacher.
And I'm sure those students are very grateful for that. That's wonderful. Dr. Garudo, what's been rewarding about university teaching for you?
I think the idea, and I like how Dr. Lindquist was saying that we have the power. We can empower our students in many ways. And with mathematics, from my perspective, this is giving them the tools that they'll need to live a full life. They can then possess numerical literacy. They will be able to read graphs, make educated decisions. They'll be more confident in decisions they make, and they gain mathematical competence. So I'm not saying we need to teach everybody calculus, but the idea that if they pick up an article and they see graphs or they see formulas, they'll be able to understand this and then be able to make good decisions throughout their lives in many areas based just on understanding critical thinking and numerical literacy from a math class. So I think the empowerment is important. And we have students, I will say the need for math teachers is great. We often have many districts calling, asking, do we have any upcoming graduates who are ready to go into the teaching field, because there is such a need for it. So I really believe that there's a lot of opportunity for those who would enjoy and like teaching mathematics in the future.
That's great to know. I also like that about how it offers a full life. So, Dr. Milletta, you get the last word here. Why would you encourage young people, or not so young, to go into the field of teaching?
Sure, I would encourage them because it's a privilege. There is a large group of professionals that make up the education field in our state that are selfless. They have so much love and care for their students. They are lifelong learners, and each day their mission is to support students the way they need to. As a former classroom teacher, I always took joy in, helping students, especially when I was in a reading specialist capacity, and seeing that spark when students got it and all the pieces came together and they were reading. And then when before that, they were significantly below level with their reading. I share that with my students because that is just what motivates me. And many of our students have selected the field of education because they were positively shaped by a teacher. And I remind them that teaching is a privilege to shape our future students and to the young adults that are going to make our world a better place. There's, in my opinion, there's no other profession. It is a great company to be in, and I'm so glad that I'm here.
Well, I just want to thank you and thank all three of you. This has been a privilege for me, quite a learning experience. And I just want to thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colette. It's been an honor
having us.
Our guests have been Professor Catherine Lindquist, Professor Patricia Garudo, and Professor Julianne Milletta. I'm Colette Liddy. Please join us next time for Caldwell University Conversations.